Yo, how's it going, guys? It's Feedaboi back with another video. Today we aren't actually doing a gameplay video, which is usually what most of my content is. Today I'm actually going to be doing something a little bit different. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a matchup tier list for top lane for Kled. I'm going to be going over a lot of the matchups that you will be seeing in the top lane so far this season and throughout the patches. On the patch that I am recording this, it is 10.7, I believe. So, who knows, maybe in the next few patches, some of these matchups could change and they could actually sway better or worse for Kled, depending on if they get buffed or nerfed or whatever. So, yeah, this video is coming out as of patch 10.7. So, yeah. So let's get right into this. So right before we actually start with the actual matchups, I do have the sections. So we got the Doom tier, which is basically just the unplayable matchups for Kled. If you see these champions, it's better off to either dodge or just pray the guy has zero idea on what to do on the matchups. Then we got the difficult tier, which is the more harder matchups that are still kind of playable, but they are definitely favored. So it's a lot harder to actually deal with it. Then we got the even/skill matchups where, as you see in the tier, it's the even matchups that can go either way just depending on who plays it better. Then we got the favored tier, which is the matchups that Kled should win on paper. And then we got the easy as fuck tier, which is the easiest matchups for Kled. The matchups you should just roll over and they shouldn't be able to do anything. But yeah, let's do it. Also, actually, right before I start this too, if you guys are interested in a mid lane tier list, because I know a lot of people like playing Kled mid as well, definitely let me know in the comment section. I will definitely be down to do one if there's enough interest in it. And yeah, so yeah, let's get right into it. So first off, we got Aatrox. Aatrox used to actually be a super easy matchup when when Kled first got his Q buff, for the healing reduction a while back. Back in what I think that was the beginning of season 10. But yeah, the matchup has actually become a little bit worse. It still is really it's still a good matchup for Kled. It's still a favorite matchup. But I know they have buffed Aatrox a bit in the past where I forget exactly what it was, but it was something to do with a sustain in lane. So although you do have the heal reduction on Kled Q, it still actually is a pretty tricky matchup to deal with early on, since it's a lot harder to burst him out since he does have a lot of sustain. But overall, it's still a really good matchup for Kled, just due to the fact that, as I mentioned, your Q has the healing reduction, and then also you can just dodge his crit Qs a lot of the times with your E, since you can recast it 2 times in a fight. And yeah, so it's a pretty solid matchup for Kled overall. And yeah, next up we got Akali. The thing with Akali is, it's on paper it's a favored matchup, but at least from my experience in higher elos, I actually think this is more of an even skill matchup. It's kind of hard to say it. I kind of want to put it in even just because yeah, Akali has a lot of high burst damage early on in lane, and it's pretty hard to actually out trade her early on, so she actually gets a lot of lane priority when you pretty early on in lane. Kled does start to take over in the lane a bit once you get to your Caulfields plus longsword, so about what, 7-8 minutes into the lane when you're level 7-8. That's when you can start to take over in the lane, as long as it's going evenly. But overall, if the Akali is trading effectively, it's actually kind of hard to stick on her. Obviously you do have your true sight on your Q and E for her shroud, so it is very nice to have when you're setting up for ganks. But if as I mentioned, if the Akali knows how to auto space and just kite and in trading and stuff correctly, it's actually pretty tricky. So that's why I'm gonna keep her at even though I feel in the lower elos, I would say it's more of a favorite matchup for Kled. But I'd just say in general, it's an even matchup, is just depending on the Akali skill. Next up, we got Camille. This matchup is the first one we're gonna put in Doomed, I'm gonna be honest. This matchup is just, it's something else, man. Camille's just such an overtuned champion at the moment. She has insane damage threat. She's got her Q, obviously, which has a ton of true damage. She's got her W, which is max health damage and heals her. Her E has great mobility for her to either chase you down or to get out of fights. And then obviously her ult is just an insane combat stim beacon or whatever. I don't even know what to call it, but this gives her a lot of extra free damage. She also has her passive shield, which is another thing that's like just added on top of it. So like she can just choose the trades whenever. Like if you try to fight her and her passive's up, you'll never actually be able to like trade with her. Even if you're ahead, she'll still just beat you in the trades. So it's a very tricky matchup. The champ's just insane. She's been broken for so long, and Riot just hasn't done anything to nerf her, so it's pretty annoying. And yeah, she's pretty meta right now, so honestly, this is one of my go-to bans at the moment. Her, Fiora, and Jax are all like my go-tos. So I definitely recommend banning her if you've been seeing her a lot in your solo queue games, because yeah, the champ is just insane, man. Even if you get ahead, she'll still just take over, so yeah. Next up, we got Chogath. Chogath, for me, is definitely a favorite matchup. Early on in lane, actually, like pre-6, I definitely think it's like honestly like maybe even an easy man, I cannot speak today. Sorry about that. But it's an easy matchup for sure. But once he gets his ult, it does become a little bit trickier, obviously because of his execute. But overall, the matchup early on is pretty Kled favored. Like once you get level 2 to like anywhere between level 2 to 5, if the Chogath tries to walk up and trade with you, you just Q him and then use your W, and the guy just can't play the game. So yeah. You just got to be careful, as I mentioned, like once he hits 6 about his execute, and eventually later on into the game he will actually outscale you, just because he's actually a pretty solid mid to late game tank, and does a lot of damage with his the mythics, the tank mythics. But yeah, in lane it's definitely a pretty easy matchup for Kled. Now Darius is, I don't know if I want to put him as difficult or even, because the thing is like, I'm gonna put him in difficult, to be honest, yeah. Because the thing with Darius is, like, you can definitely win the matchup. It's just he has a lot of stuff in his, like, tools and stuff in his kit to, like, be able to just roll you over in lane. Obviously, his hemorrhage from his passive just does a ton of damage early on. Can easily chunk you down and dismount you for free. And then, obviously, once he hits level 6, he just gets his free execute on his ult, so if he gets his 5 stacks on you and you dismount, you're basically just going to get one shot. So it's a very, very annoying matchup. Most Dariuses also tend to run Ghost, so if you ever do overextend in the lane, they'll just proc Ghost and just run right at you and just 100 to 0 you. So you have to be very careful in that lane. You need to make sure you're dodging his Qs with either your E or just obviously like auto spacing. And yeah, I'd recommend if you dismount in that lane and he has his ult, I'd recommend usually just backing off and just either TPing back to lane or just walking back, because once you're dismounted, unless he has nothing up, it's very hard to like actually remount against him, just because it was bleed passive from his hemorrhage. Next up, we got Mundo. I'd say Mundo's I mean, he's kind of a similar boat as Chogath, but I definitely think he's easier. I think this is one of the easiest matchups for Kled, because obviously like early on, although Mundo does have a lot of like actual like base damage in his kit, like his Q does a lot of like max health damage. Or is it, I forget if it's max or current health damage, but it does a lot of like damage early on. But for the most part, Mundo has to run into you. And Mundo running into you is good for Kled, obviously, because you want them to come into you so you can use your full combo, like your W, and just whale them down, and then you have your E to stick on top of him. And of course, you got the healing reduction for his ult. So him running into you is just a benefit for you, and yeah, you can't really do much. As long as you're not getting hard harassed by his Qs early on in lane, and you just wait for your level 3 combo, you can just EQ onto him and just 100 to 0 him basically. So yeah, it's a pretty free matchup. Next up, we got this disgusting champion, man. This is the worst matchup for Kled Fiora. The champion is just super overtuned. Just can take over lanes like it's nothing, man. It's just I just despise this champion. She's got her parry to just negate your Q. She's got insane mobility with her Q. And then she has a lot of burst damage with her ult and her passive vitals. So the champion is just really insane. I'd recommend, if you see this champion and you just don't want to play against it, or like, you know, it's like a experienced Fiora, just dodge it. It's not worth your time. But Fiora is usually my go-to promo ban. This champion is just too insane, man. Just super annoying. But yeah. Next up, we got GP. GP is another one like a colleague where it's usually more of like an even maybe favored matchup in lower elos, but once you get to the higher elos, it's actually a more difficult matchup. Like it's up in the tier with Darius. I will actually put him in even though, just because it's very hard to be like it's very hard for the GP, like, or there's a very select few like amount of like actual like super good GP players. You usually won't struggle too much with this lane until like I'd say like mid to high diamond. That's when it starts to become more tricky. Because for the most part, like GP, yes, he has his like a lot of like poke early from his grass plus Q combos. But if the GP overextends at all, you can just land an EQ on top of him and just 100-0 him because he's actually very squishy early on. So you just got to make sure you're not getting hard harassed by his Q grasp procs early on. And for the most part, yeah, it's not too bad. Next up, we got Garen. Garen is, honestly, I don't know. I'm definitely putting him in at least difficult, but at some points, I feel like it's actually like a doom matchup. This champion is just really insane at the moment with Stridebreaker. Oh, yeah, I actually forgot about Stridebreaker as well on Darius. Darius also, like, these two champions are just insane with Stridebreaker. They just run you down with it. And, yeah, they just do a ton of DPS. And obviously, Garen has his execute ultimate as well. So, yeah, when you're dismounted, you're basically just doomed in that lane. So you just got to be very careful. Can't really fight him too much after 6. Like, pre-6, you can look to chunk him down and, like, potentially look for an all-in on him. But once he hits level 6, the lane's pretty much over for you. You just gotta pray your team's carries and gets ahead. Or your jungler just camps you to the point where you get too fed to where he can't kill you. But that lane, it's just like the Darius lane where he'll just run you down if you overextend and then just, yeah, 100-0 you. So it's a very, very annoying matchup. Next up, we got Gnar. I'd say Gnar's an even matchup. I know a lot of people hate playing against Gnar just because he has a lot of poke and just sustain. Or not sustain, but like pretty good like damage of DPS over time. But I used to, in my experience, most Gnars just don't know how to play against Kled, and they will just overextend and try to like fight you. Especially like once they get Mega Gnar, they always just think they're invincible and they can just engage onto you. But in reality, if they come into you and you're not like super chunked out, you just land your full combo onto them, allow them to dismount you, and then you just run at them and just kill them for free. So the matchup's pretty free as long as you don't get hard harassed and poked out early on. So you just got to be smart about it. Just don't like be dumb and just walk up like level 1, level 2 when you don't have like your full combo to like engage on him. Just Q farm and just chill, and then yeah, once you're at level 3, if Gnar ever overextends, you can just EQ onto him and just 100-0 him. Next up, we have Hecarim. I don't really see this matchup too much. From my experience, it's usually not like too bad. It's more of like a cheesy lane. But if the Hecarim ever tries to like engage onto you, I feel like you'll just be able to just melt him. So I'm gonna put him on favored. I don't think he's like very popular in like the top lane, so I don't think like you're gonna be able to see it too much. But for the most part, all you gotta do is if he's ever trying to like trade with you, you just land your Q onto him, and then you can obviously like E as well and just combo him down slowly but surely. But yeah. Next up, we got Heimer. This matchup, I'd honestly say it's more difficult, to be honest. Like, I don't think the champ's like you can definitely kill the champion, but at the same time, it's like he has a lot of like harass and just poke, which will just make it like super hard to CS early on. So if you don't have a jungler that's looking to like level 2, level 3 your lane, it just feels kind of doomed. You can't really walk up, and he'll just hard harass you, and it just feels really bad. So for the most part in that lane, you just gotta hope your jungler comes, and then you can just kill him because he's very squishy if he does like overextend it all, and your jungler comes. But overall, he just hard harasses you and just denies you a lot of CS, so it just feels kind of bad. Now we got Alawi. I'd say Alawi's an even matchup. He can go either way. For the Alawi matchup though, as long as you're not getting hit by her E, it's usually not too bad, just because most of Alawi's damage does come from her E early on. So you just gotta make sure you're dodging her E, and then when her E's down, you can look for engages. And yeah, it's usually not too bad. Just gotta play around her E, CD. Next up, Irelia. Irelia, I'd say is also probably an even matchup. Obviously, like if it's a really good Irelia, it can become a difficult matchup because of her passive, like doing a lot of like just DPS over time. But for the most part in this lane, as long as you're not fighting her while her passive's stacked up, you usually can just whittle her down. And then once you get her to around half, then you can just look for all-ins. So yeah, you just don't want to be trading with her when she has her Q stacked up to like 4 or 5 stacks, because then she'll just do a lot of like DPS over time and just melt you. But yeah, if her passive's not stacked up, it's very easy to trade with her and just chunk her down. Next up, we got Jax. Straight up to Doom tier. This is another matchup where it's like super hard to like really do much. The only like win con you have in this lane early on is hoping that Jax just like panics and randomly uses his E off CD, like just randomly, and then his E's down, then you can look for engages onto him. But if it's a good Jax player and he doesn't just randomly like just panic up E all the time, it's usually pretty free for him to just free scale in the lane and just eventually start like one-shotting you once he gets like level 6, level 7 and starts getting components. So that's another lane where it's like, if you see it, I usually would just dodge, or you just hope the guy's really bad and hopefully you can play the game. But even if you get ahead in a lane like this, he'll just eventually outscale you and it's just going to feel really bad. Next up, we got Jace. It's another even matchup, I'd say. Like, it's another one like the Aurelia, where if it's good at Jace, it actually can become like a difficult matchup. But for the most part, he's got to make sure, it's kind of like the Gnar lane, where you got to make sure you don't get hard poked early. And once you get your full combo level 3, level 4-ish, you could start looking for like engages onto him, because Jace is also a very squishy champion. So if he ever like walks up too far, you could just engage onto him and just 100-0 him. Kale is a very easy matchup because she has very low base damage early on and also doesn't have that much ability to like peel herself, obviously, because she doesn't like a dash or anything. So if the kill ever overextends, you just kill her and you can just freeze the lane on her, so you're forcing her to overextend. So yeah, you just 100-0 her and then she just can't really do much early on. Like obviously, like if she gets like level 11 plus, eventually she will outscale you, but usually the game will get to that point if you're playing the lane correctly and you just roll her over early game. Kennen, I don't know if I want to put it as difficult or not. I don't really see Kennens anymore. It's kind of like a heimer lane, honestly, in a way where it's like he has a lot of like poke and just harass early on, which it's like super annoying, and he also has really good peel for himself. So honestly, I probably will just put him as a difficult matchup, just because yeah, he has a lot of peel for himself with his passive stun and his E move speed or whatever, and I'm pretty sure they take phase rush as well in the matchup, so it's just very annoying. And yeah, he just has a lot in his kit to like peel you off of him. So yeah, it's very annoying. Like you just gotta make sure, as I mentioned, like with a lot of these poke matchups, that you don't get hard harassed early and allow him to push into you and just set up for ganks for your jungler, to be honest. But obviously, like if you see him waste his stuff on the wave, then you can look for engages onto him and it's usually like not too bad. But overall, like if the Kennen's playing it correctly, it's a pretty annoying matchup for sure. Malphite, I'd say, is an even matchup. It honestly could be a favored early on, but once he starts getting items, it's Malphite. Like he gets his Ninja Tabis, his Bramble Vest, you can't really kill him anymore. So I'm just gonna put it as an even matchup, because as long as the Malphite's not running it down, he's just gonna eventually outscale you and just take over the lane. So in a lane like that, you just want to try to poke him out early and just hope he makes a mistake of like overextending and then you just 100-0 him. But yeah. Next up, we got Maokai. Maokai, I'm gonna put also as a favored matchup. It's like a Chogath, where you can just hard beat him early, but eventually he'll just become super tanky to where you're probably not going to be able to kill him in the side lane. But early on, if he ever walks up, you can just engage onto him and just DPS him really freely. Next up, we got Wukong. Wukong is, I'd say he's even as well. He actually could be like slightly, like I could put him in the favor tier, to be honest. But I feel like Wukong's like passive just gives him like a little bit of an edge, where it's like he can like take over the lane. But for the most part, against a Wukong, as long as you're not trading with him level 1 and you just wait for your level 2 spike with your W, if he ever engages on you, you just Q on him and get your true sight, and then you can just wail him down with your W. And then obviously once you get your E as well, you can just EQ on him, and he can't really get away from you, and you can just hard beat him in lane early on. Except Mordekaiser. I'd say Mordekaiser early on is actually a favorite matchup for Kled. It does become harder, like once he starts getting like Seekers and Tabbies and stuff like that. But I'd say, especially pre-6, like if the Mordekaiser ever like overextends at all, you can just wail at him and just beat him up early for free. And yeah, for the most part in this lane, all you gotta do is just not get hit by his E, and once his E's down, you can just look for engages. And yeah, if he overextends at all, you just 100-0 him. So yeah, it's not too bad. Next up, we got Nasus. It's a really easy matchup. It's just like the kill one, where if you just freeze the lane and like force him to have to overextend, you'll just be able to engage and 100-0 him for free. He will eventually outscale, obviously, but it usually doesn't get to that point as well, where it's like as long as you're landing your or not landing, freezing the wave and just punishing him early, he can't really do much in the lane. And yeah, it's pretty free. Olaf is a favorite matchup for sure, just because he has to run into you as well, and you have your healing reduction. So as long as you land your Q onto the Olaf, he can't really do anything. And yeah, it's usually pretty free. Not really too much to say on that lane, to be honest, other than, yeah, just make sure you don't waste your Q, and it's usually fine. Ornn, another even matchup. Can go either way. If the Ornn, as I mentioned, it's like, kind of like the Malphite lane again, where it's like if he makes a dumb mistake early on of like fighting before he gets his items, you'll just be able to beat him for free, as long as you're not getting like his passive procced on you constantly. But yeah, eventually he'll get to the, like to his 2-3 items where he'll just become super tanky and unkillable as well. Next up, we got Poppy. Poppy is, in my opinion, she's actually like, well, I'd say she's either the top for difficult or like the lowest for doomed. I'd honestly probably put her in Doom just because she is hard, a lot harder than like these matchups for sure. Or actually, you know what? I'll put her as difficult. She definitely is the hardest matchup for difficult, just because like she hard disengages you with her W. She has a ton of like base damage. And there's a lot of like just DPS and or not DPS, but like a lot of burst damage on you. Super easy for her to build tank items and just become like unkillable in the lane. And yeah, it just feels really bad to play against. Like she just negates you from being able to engage and just hard out skills even in the fights. So, and only like that, you just gotta mostly just try to whittle her down with Qs and autos and just farm it out. Can't really do too much. Quinlan is another difficult matchup because she can peel off you pretty easily with her E if she times it correctly with when you're EQing onto her, and she just get enough distance so you can't recast your E. And she just has a lot of DPS on you early on. Like eventually, once you get items, you will beat her, but in lane she just takes over as long as she's auto spacing correctly and just not like griefing her positioning. So it's a pretty annoying lane for sure. Renekton, I'd say it's an even skill matchup, but to be honest, in higher Eulos, I'd probably put him as difficult just because he's basically, it's like better version of Kled at the moment. Like he has a lot like better like scaling like potential in the 1v1 obviously, and then also he has a combat ult that just allows him to like be a lot stronger early in lane. And yeah, once he starts getting items, he just becomes like a monster, especially if he just builds Bork against you or just like any form of like max self damage. He'll just melt you in trades. The only way you can really kill Renekton is like pre-6 if he's like trying to look for like engages onto you. And yeah, just take some pretty dumb trades. But if the lane goes like evenly for like throughout, eventually he's just gonna start to outscale you. So you gotta hope that he takes some dumb trades and yeah, just whittle him down. Rengar, I actually don't know where I want to put this. I'd probably say favored, just because like, especially in the lower elos, like Rengars will just tend to like just randomly jump on you and just allow you to just land your Q for free. So it's usually not too bad. As long as you're not getting harassed level 1, that's the one thing. You can't walk up level 1 for the wave, just because Rengar is actually stronger level 1. So you just have to get up lane prob, but as soon as you hit level 2, you can walk up, and if the Rengar jumps on you, you just throw your Q at him, and then just run at him with your W, and you can just chunk him for free, and potentially even all in him. So yeah, for the most part, you just gotta make sure you don't die level 1, or like fight him level 1, because that's what he wants. And once you have your Q, like whenever he jumps on you, just land your Q, and he can't do anything. Riven, I'd say it's another skill matchup. It's not too bad. Like it's definitely like a lower end of a skill matchup, especially like pre-6. But obviously, like Riven does have like her insane like kit where she has a ton of dashes and like just mobility to like be able to peel in and out. So if the Riven knows how to play the lane correctly and just doesn't get punished pre-6, it can become a lot trickier. But yeah, for the most part, like level 1 she wins, but as soon as you get level 2, if she tries to like look for an engages or like all-ins on you, as long as you have your combo up and available, you'll just be able to like free DP, like free hit her and just chunk her out for free. Rumble, it's another even matchup. He has a lot of like poke and just good harass, but as long as you're taking smart trades and just not getting like super hard poked for no reason, it's usually not too bad. And eventually, like once you get to your first item, I honestly think you're actually stronger than the Rumble. He does, I think at like 3-ish items, I'm pretty sure Rumble does outscale you, but early on, as long as, yeah, you're not getting hard harassed and just playing it nice and smart, baiting out his abilities on the waves, and he's about to overheat, then you can just look to engage onto him for free. And it's not too bad. Ryze is another one of the even matchups where it's like, if the Ryze is really good and he knows how space correctly, it's very like difficult to actually get on top of him. But if he makes a mistake at all and you land your EQ onto him, you can just burst him out super easily and just kill him for free. Then we got Shen. I'll put him as probably the hardest even matchup. Like, it's definitely like tricky just because he has a lot of like max health damage, and he's also like very tanky, and also he can just block your autos with his W. So when you're dismounted, it can be like super tricky to remount against him. But at the same time, as long as you're taking very like smart trades early on and not just like randomly fighting him when he has everything up, it's usually not too bad. You can usually get ahead in that lane and potentially solo kill him if he makes a mistake. So I'd say as long as you don't just like fight Shen when he has everything available, it's usually not too bad. Singe, I'd say, is his favorite matchup for Kled. He can't really do too much against you as long as you're not like just randomly fighting him and just like chasing him through his poison trails. Usually he'll just be able to just free farm, and then yeah, if he ever walks up like too far, you'll just EQ on top of him and then just follow him with your second E and then just well him down for free. So it's a pretty free lane for the most part. Sion is definitely like, I honestly kind of want to put him down here as easy AF. I will actually put him as favored though, just because he is like pretty strong right now as a champion. But for the actual matchup itself, as long as you aren't allowing him to just like get like max range Qs on him or on you, and you just EQ on top of him and dodge his Q in landing phase, you'll just be able to melt him for free. Because you can always just dodge his Q with your E, and then yeah, you just hard out DPS him in the fights. So it's usually pretty free early on. He will outscale you eventually, obviously, just because tank mythics are like really strong. And just tank items in general, but in lane, like if the Sion ever tries to fight you, you just EQ on top of him, dodge his Q, and then yeah, you just beat him for free. Silas, I'm gonna put him as easy AF. I don't think he's as easy as like a Kale or Nasus, but at the same time, it's like he's another one of those champions where if he just tries to engage onto you, you just throw your Q onto him, and he has very low base armor, so you just 100-0 him for free. You just engage and kill him. So if he ever tries to fight you, you just basically just punish him for free. So yeah, he can't really do anything against you. Teemo, I'd say it's an even matchup. It's definitely an annoying matchup because of like obviously it's like poison and blind darts, like super annoying. But at the same time, as long as you're not getting like super hard harassed early on, you usually can just punish him if he ever walks up, because he's a very squishy character. So yeah, if he ever walks up, you just EQ onto him, or even just ult on him first and then EQ, and then you just kill him for free. And yeah, rushing merc shreds and getting nasty in this lane and your runes is super free as well once you get those items. Tryndamere, I'm honestly, I don't know. Like the thing is with Tryndamere, it's so unpredictable about the lane. Like it's either gonna be like it could be like a really free lane if like he doesn't get the good RNG, but at the same time, if he gets insane RNG on his crits, he can be like one of the hardest matchups to deal with. So I guess I'll put him at the top of even, but I actually think it might honestly be more difficult just because like this champion is too unpredictable, man. Like he either like can get like 3-4 crits on you level 1, or he doesn't get any crits and you just kill him for free. So you just gotta hope that he doesn't get like free crits off on you early and you just melt him for free. And just look for good trades. But yeah, I could go either way, honestly, with that lane. I don't know why Udyr is on here. I'd assume Udyr would just be like a pretty like free matchup. I'd say I'd put him as favored. Like I've never played this lane, but I assume he'd be like a pretty easy matchup. Not really much. I don't even know. Whatever. We'll just say he's favored. Urgot, I'd say is also in. Actually, do I want to put him as favorite? You know, I'll put him as like the below difficult, or like at the bottom of difficult. I actually think it's not like super insanely hard, but at the same time, Urgot has really high base stats, and obviously he has his ult to execute. So if he gets you dismounted, if he times his ult with your dismount, obviously you can't move during it. So if he throws it correct, like the right timing, he can land his ult instantly on you, and then yeah, he just runs at you, and he obviously like once or twice when you're dismounted, and then just pull you in and execute you. So you gotta be careful with dismounting in that lane for the most part. It's usually not too bad. I'm not sure if I'm gonna leave Victor out of this one, because I'm gonna have him on my, if I do a mid lane one, I'll have him for that. Because like I don't really see Victor top anymore, so I'm not gonna actually put that in there. I honestly probably should take out the Udyr as well. You know, I'm gonna take out Udyr as well. I don't see this shit ever. But whatever. Yeah, let's leave those out. Vladimir, easy AF matchup. He can't do anything against you. He's like a Kale in the Nasus where like if he tries to trade with you early on or just walk up, you just EQ on him and just melt him because he has really low base damage. He will eventually outscale you, but as long as you're wave managing correctly, he can't play the game early. Yasuo is a favorite matchup for Kled. He is one of those champions as well where it's like if he engages onto you or like tries to go walk up to you, you just land your Q onto him and then you just burst him out for free. So yeah, it's pretty free. And then Yorick. This is a champion that actually just got like a huge like rework this patch and apparently is actually really good now. Before this patch, I would have had him at like easy AF because there's the bug's still in the game, but there's a bug where your E actually just one-shots all of his ghouls. So it's like really free to like lane against him. But with this new buff, I'm not actually too sure yet where I want to put him because I haven't played against it yet. I'll probably just put him as favored at the moment. Like I'll put him, I don't know exactly where in favored he'd be or even like as even or skilled. I guess I'll just put him at the top of favored because I'm not sure where exactly the champion is right now. I know he actually has like a really high win rate right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually a lot more difficult than it was before just because the champion's better. But for the most part, yeah, it's usually not too bad just because of his ghouls getting one shot by your E because of a bug that Riot Games just has in the game just because, you know, it's Kled, he's got to have bugs and Riot just doesn't fix them. So I'd say he's a favorite matchup as long as you're just like poking out with Qs. It's usually pretty free, and yeah, pre-6 if you chunk him around like half, you could just EQ onto him and just one-shot him. But eventually he'll outskill you in the 1v1. But as long as yeah, you're playing the trades like smart early on, and just poking him out, it's usually pretty free. But yeah, I think that's all the champs I want to do because yeah, I'm not gonna do any of these because I don't see them top ever. Honestly, I probably shouldn't have done Hecarim. I mean, I've seen it a low in the past, but I haven't really seen it recently, so we'll just keep that in. But yeah, this is my tier list for the matchups as of 10.7 for Kled. Obviously, this is just my opinion on it. Like, everyone's gonna have different opinions on like certain matchups, but this is from my experience personally. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section down below, obviously, if you guys did enjoy the different type of style of video. And if you guys want to see more of these, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I am thinking of maybe doing a mid lane tier list for Kled matchups as well, so definitely let me know in the comments down below if you guys enjoyed. But yeah, I appreciate everyone stopping by. Definitely go check out my other socials as well, my Twitch. I stream on there every weekday, usually start time at around like 10 a.m. EST. But yeah, I appreciate y'all stopping by, and I'll see you guys in a bit. Take care, everyone. Peace.